Mr. Shankar is a Senior Director and Sustainable Lead at Matrade Malaysian Trade Development Agency, where he drives trade promotion, market access, and sustainable initiatives. In today's podcast, Mr. Shankar shares valuable insights for all Timorese, especially Timor-Leste entrepreneurs, about the Asian market and how they can position their products to compete regionally. This episode is a must-watch for entrepreneurs seeking to expand their business and understand opportunities between Malaysian and Timor-Leste. For the full discussion and more in-depth insight, don't forget to watch the complete video on our YouTube channel, IP Business Podcast.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Timorese and welcome to IP Business Podcast with a special program about ASEAN Market Region. I would like to welcome to our guest, Mr. Shankar. If I say something wrong, I apologize. A Senior Director, Sustainable Lead from Matrade. Can you introduce the Matrade role and why this event happened in Timor-Leste?
Thanks a lot, Andres. Thank you for the invitation. Now, basically, Matrade is a government agency set up by the Malaysian government to promote trade. As you know, Malaysia is a country that runs on trade. Very much like Timor-Leste, it's relatively speaking a very small country, a small population base.
Not too small.
Well, relatively speaking, yeah.
Malaysia is one of the wonderful countries.
Wonderful, thank you. You know, when I was growing up, our population was like 13 million. Now it's about 13 million. So we have grown. But in comparison with a lot of countries, even within ASEAN, right? If you compare to Indonesia, if you compare to Thailand, if you compare to Myanmar, and all that larger economies. So the point I was trying to make is that we need trade. We are a country that is very open. We have a very open economy. We basically function in terms of import and export, right? So if we do a lot of those things, and because of that, the government felt it was important to have one dedicated government agency to help to promote trade between Malaysia and other countries. So in 1993, Matrade was organized as an entity under the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. And today we have offices all over. We have coverage all over. We also, we have an officer who sort of covers the Timor-Leste market as well. So that's what we have. And then what happened was, of course, all of us know the good news, when Timor-Leste rightfully took a step and it took its rightful chair at the table of the ASEAN table. There was a very momentous and an occasion that all of us were very appreciative, very historical. But what happens after that, I think ultimately becomes an important question, and that's where this particular mission came about. We felt that subsequent to the ascension, and of course, as a follow-up to also our Malaysian Prime Minister's visit to Timor-Leste, something practical needs to take place. And one of the things that we thought would make sense was to increase the people-to-people interaction between both our countries from a business perspective. So we sort of, got the invite out. About 19 companies, Malaysian companies, heeded the call, and they said, let's do a mission. Let's go to Timor-Leste. Let's meet our potential partners, friends from the Timor-Leste business community, and let's explore what can be done. So that's what a bit of background to this whole mission.
So, because this is a market integrations, what factors can make a product competitive in Malaysian market as a Timorese products into?
So Malaysia, as I mentioned, is a very open economy, right? So we are party to a lot of multilateral and bilateral trade arrangements, and every time we do a trade arrangement, FTAs and all that, you open up your economy, right? So it's a very open economy. More so if you're part of ASEAN. So the competition is extensive in the case of Malaysia. On the bright side of it is that the Malaysians are very open to new products and new services, right? So we're always looking for options. And Malaysia is a net importer of food, right? We import a lot of our food items, a lot of commodities, a lot of agriculture produce. I was told, and I experienced that in Timor-Leste as well, you have some fantastic commodities, wonderful coffee. So much. I cannot say enough of it.
Sorry, hopefully you can take some of the coffees because it's one of the
Oh yes, yes, that's what we're trying to do. In fact, whenever you go to a country, like you'd like to buy some stuff for your colleagues back home, and for me it's just coffee. That's my colleagues are going to get a lot of this coffee. So coffee was wonderful, but you also find a lot of other things. I also fell in love with avocado shake.
Really?
That was brilliant,
Oh
right? So
my gosh.
everywhere I go, I'm like, hey, give me avocado shake, right? So, and then I did not know, right? So yeah, maybe avocado as well. So there's a lot that Timor-Leste has to offer, and it's interesting, right? Because something like avocado, typically in the mind share of Malaysian consumers, it's something that comes from the Western world and stuff like that, right? We don't associate avocado so much with ASEAN countries and so on. So it was a very pleasant surprise to see the also source avocado, for example. So those are some broad areas that agriculture and produce services. You have an oil and gas sector, so there's opportunity there as well. We'll be happy to consider.
But for the market integrations, our agriculture is still like in the modern, in the traditional way. So, in your point of view, how that the SMEs or the local products can develop from the traditional to the modern, like in Malaysian?
That's an interesting question, right? No, so typically what happens in a developing economy, you would think that they are starting in a difficult position. I don't think so. I think the way to look at it is from a development phase, right? The positive side of starting from a low base is that you don't have any legacy baggage. You don't have a lot of things to, the older things to hold on to. You start new, you start fresh. For example, typically in the past, like in the case of Malaysia, we did a lot of manufacturing. Only when a country gets developed, you move into the services industry. You move into areas such as digitalization and so on. So in the case of Timor-Leste, you don't necessarily need to go to the manufacturing phase per se, right? You can go into it, but not necessarily so, because if you look at the younger generation, they are more excited over the services sector. And services sector is where it gives you the higher value added opportunities, right? And better remuneration and so on and so forth. So if given a choice, if you look at the matrix of things, to focus on things that Timor-Leste has a lot of strength. So typically you have you have a lot of very strong agriculture industry, commodities and so on. So you can sort of look into that clearly. But you can also start developing the services capabilities of Timor-Leste because the people are intelligent, the people are capable. With a bit of capacity building, a bit of training, a bit of education and so on, the younger generation of Timor-Leste can take the easier pathway of looking into the services sector. And for you to make the services sector exportable is also a lot easier than typically trying to become a manufacturer and so on. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying the usual development path of a country that maybe got independence maybe 50 years ago would be different as opposed to a country that got its independence relatively speaking. Right? So different ideas can come into it.
So, how can companies from emerging Asian markets position themselves to compete with established Malaysian brands?
Well, one of the things that's happening, I think, around the world, and which is an opportunity for Timor-Leste companies, is to play the green card, and this is critical, because the world is moving to a more sustainable world. The world is moving to a more decarbonized world. The consumers of the world are looking for green products, so to speak, right, with lower carbon footprint and so on. So positioning Timor-Leste products as products that has been produced with lesser impact or negative impact onto the environment I think would be the key. That will give you that sort of edge that perhaps you might not get from the other two variables that constitute usual a consumer decision. Right? So consumer decision usually happens from a price point of view. You like say which is the cheapest, right? And then you will say which has the highest or best quality. Now today, price and quality has become commodities. It's almost you have to have that. It's not like a big thing. If you don't have a good price, you can't go to the market anyway, right? If you don't have good quality, you can't. So those has become commodity. Now there's a third component that would probably be defining what a consumer basis is consumption pattern on, and that would be is it green or not. So perhaps what Timor-Leste can do is start branding its products in terms of the green angle, the sustainable. Is it sustainably produced, right? Is it compliant to ESG certifications and so on? So if you're able to do that globally, not only in Malaysia, but globally, there are many other companies that have not been doing that or not been doing enough. So that would give, I think, Timor-Leste this competitive advantage, which hopefully will be beneficial, even in terms of accessing the Malaysian market.
In your experience, how is import products have certifications like halal and Shurim and ISO for consumers' trust?
Okay, so it's critical, right? There's two levels to it. One, if you wish to export to a particular country, you need to have minimum standards, right? So in cases where there are regulatory bodies, you'll say, you know what, you cannot come to the country until you have these regulations. That's the first part of it. Those are minimal requirements like ISOs and stuff like that. Then once you've entered the particular market, then you got to start targeting which consumer market you want to hit, right? Now, assuming if you want to target the Muslim population or Muslim consumers, then you'll say, look, I need halal, right? But if you're not, so if you come to Malaysia and Indonesia, perhaps you'd say, look, it's a food item. A big majority of the population are Muslims, and hence, if I want to reach out to that market, I need halal. But at the same time, with the same product, if it is perhaps it's going to a different market, the Philippines or something, that you may not want to think that as a big thing. But having said that, that's the first step. The second step is you have to see the whole world. What after Malaysia? What after Philippines? Right? So having an extra certification is always better than having one less. So if you can do the halal, do the halal. If you can do the ISO, do the ISO. In the case of Syrian, it's regulatory, right? So if you have certain kinds of products that requires certification from Syrian, that you got to do. So those are the regulatory part. Then the second part is basically what is good to have in terms of trying to hit the biggest chunk of that particular consumer market.
But any SMEs from Timor-Leste can get any certification from the Malaysian government for halal, or we need to pass for some process that example in our government need to introduce halal because we also have Muslim community in this country that contribute to our history also. Like example, we have Mariel Katire is our top leader from the country that represent our country during our independence.
Yeah. So what happens typically, JAKIM, which is the certification body in Malaysia that accreditates halal products and so on, they usually have a certification body accredited in another country. So I'm not too sure in the case of Timor-Leste, but that they call it CBs, right? So that certification bodies would then be accepted. So let's say you carry a particular halal mark from a country or a certification body accredited by JAKIM. It could be any type of product. Then it's allowed. You can easily come in because when JAKIM looks at the halal logo that you have, and that is from a source or from a certification body that is sort of gets in. But on the other hand, let's say if you are into Malaysia and you want to set up a factory and stuff like that, and then you want to produce, then JAKIM itself will become the certification.
What kind of partnerships that most valuable for entering Malaysian markets, like distributors, import agents, wholesalers?
Yeah. Okay. So again, you got to look at the kind of product. Let's take coffee for example, right? So if you have coffee and you want to sort of access the market, typically what happens is you need to get hold of an importer. And then you also ultimately will need to have enough funds to sort of support that whole value chain. From an importer it goes to a distributor, from a distributor then potentially it goes to a wholesaler, and from a wholesaler potentially it goes to the supermarket, for example, right? So across that there has to be enough margins for everybody in the value chain, so that ultimately when it does goes to the supermarket, that margins are adequate to support everybody's activities, right? So let's say you want it to be priced at 10 ringgit Malaysian, right? So you may want to give 10% perhaps, just a number, right? So maybe 10%, but at least 40% would need to go into the system before you hit the final retail market, right? So there are many layers. That will be for FMCG, because in the case of FMCG, the importer generally is not the distributor. The importer will just help you to bring the product in, but sometimes the importer could also be the distributor, right? So from the four parts, it could end up as two parts. It's also possible, but that's rare. So depending on who's your importer and what sort of access he has a supermarket. Then the second part you may want to consider is, once you're in the supermarket, the biggest challenge you would have in fact it's not in Malaysia but in any most countries would be is, do you have marketing budget to promote? Because from a supermarket perspective, like, it's a new product, right? And my aisle space is expensive. Why would I want to put a new product in the aisle, right? So what would you do? So they would expect the particular product owner to support marketing support. So you must do some promotion and all that, right? Because if they carry your product and it doesn't sell, then they won't be too happy as well. So that's one. The other thing that you'll have to be sort of maybe be sensitive about is, it's usually on a consignment basis, right? So what happens is you get the supermarket to pick up the product. Let's say it's 10 packets. The supermarket is not going to pay you immediately, right? The supermarket will hold on. Let's say out of the 10 they are able to sell 5, so they will only pay for the 5, and usually they're not going to pay you immediately as well. Let's say the product is sold in July, then usually it's about 60 days. So September is when you finally get paid. So you need that cash flow as well. So all these rightfully would be something that the importer does. But sometimes the importer will say, you know what, I don't want to take all the risks, it's a new product and stuff like that. Can you as a brand owner commit those funds for us? So to begin with, you need a bit of funding for the cash flow. But once the first or two rounds is gone, your money's in, right? In out, then the whole thing runs.
So, will the Malaysian companies to open to long-term collaboration with the SMEs from Timor-Leste? If yes, under what conditions?
Oh, in this case, for us import or for us export?
For both import and export.
Okay. So in the case of exports, I'll take that first. So basically what Malaysian companies would look at is the credibility of the partner. I don't think so the size matters. It's basically the credibility of the partner, right? So if the partner is credible in the context of they are from the industry, that's what most times we look at, right? We prefer not to collaborate or work with people from not the industry, because your language will be very different, right? They might not understand your industry. So preferably it should be somebody who has been in industry and has some level of track record. That would establish the credibility. Size doesn't really matter. They can be a one-man company, doesn't matter. In many cases, like oil and gas, it could be just one person, right? But what you're reaching out to is the credibility of the person and the expertise of the person. If they know what they're doing and so on, then you feel comfortable. Third, potentially, is that do you have that sort of access needed to get things done, right? So that's also an area that generally you will sort of look at as well. In the case of if you are collaborating with partners who are wanting to export into Malaysia, very similarly, what we sort of look at is, in this context, is you're a credible manufacturer or a credible brand owner. If you've been in the industry long enough, do you understand the industry? And of course, it's given in terms of the product quality and all that, because the expectations are very high in terms of product quality. That means the factory in itself, if it's a manufactured product, the factory has to have HACCP and all that certification required that would allow you to sort of export into the Malaysian market. But Malaysians, by nature, are very open to new products. And I think that's a very positive part. Unlike in the past, where I think the brands from the Western world perhaps dominated the shelves in Malaysia. Today, as with many parts of Asia and the rest of the world, in fact, everybody is looking for something new, right? So it could always be exciting to get a product from Timor-Leste. It's just that awareness level might not be so high in terms of knowing what Timor-Leste is good at it. For example, avocado from Timor-Leste, really, kind of stuff, right? So then that education has to happen, the awareness has to be created, and basically the confidence has to be given to consumers, because these are food items, right? Has to be given to the consumers that the products has been produced in a way that potentially cannot harm them, right? So once you've got that, and then they taste the product, say, wow, it's fantastic, then you will get traction, because we are open to new products, right? Unlike other markets, sometimes people are like, oh no, I don't want to try. But in Malaysia, it's completely different. If you go to Malaysia, a typical Malaysian family has no problem eating one day Malay food. Then the first meal is Malay food, second meal is Chinese food, third meal is the Indian food, and then the next day you're eating Japanese food, and then next day you're eating Korean food. So Malaysians are, just very,
It's a very vibrant country.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll have any problems if look, Timor-Leste stuff. Let's just try it. Let's eat it. Right. So the consumer part is that it's the education.
But they need any advertising for we can promote our products, or
you do with any sort of products, it's not only for Timor-Leste, right? So in any context, you need to advertise, you need to create marketing of that. But the positive side of it is, since this year, there is direct flight between Malaysia and Timor-Leste, but the air flies 3 times a week. So today you are able to access Timor-Leste, and likewise Timor-Leste can access Malaysia. In fact, even today I met some of my friends in Timor-Leste, and they were saying, oh, they've gone to Malaysia, they find it very exciting. They never expected Malaysia to be what it is. And similarly, we have 28 people, 19 companies, 28 of our business community here, and every one of them have only good things to say about Timor-Leste, and they're excited. And most of them are bringing back coffee, right? So imagine this. So if they bring back and they go there, and the word by mouth goes around, a word by mouth might not attract the kind of wide coverage that you want, right? So that's the first step, is word by mouth. So the second step, then somebody has to actively look into, for example, let's say coffee drinking is a big culture in Malaysia. Let's say you're able to get into 1 or 2 of the chain cafes in Malaysia to pick up and use Timor-Leste beans or coffee, right? If you're able to do that, then you advertise, this is unique, this is from Timor-Leste, I'm the only one have it in Malaysia. That sort of a branding, marketing effort has to be put in place, and then it will grow by itself.
Since we enter in 26th of October in the event in the happen in Malaysia, I thank you for the government for help us and support for this milestones integrations. What any mechanisms on funding that the Malaysian government or ASEAN can support cross-border trade finance for SMEs?
Okay, so what happens is that the Malaysian government through the ministry has been providing a lot of training support to policymakers as a start, because what we felt was it's good to provide that sort of support so that the policies are in place to be able to support SMEs. A lot of information on information related to what Malaysia think could be of help to the Timor-Leste side has been given to the right policymakers, so that they are able to develop support structure programs that be able to assist the SMEs to continue growing. In terms of direct grants or anything, that would have to potentially go to perhaps a more centralized approach, maybe ASEAN Secretariat or something of that sort. But bilaterally, what is available is that one is now you have connectivity, and that's a good thing. Two, you have a consumer base that is very open to products from the Timor-Leste SMEs. Not only products, but I would also to emphasize on services as well.
How SMEs can access all these informations that the ASEAN can give to us, because everything is new for us, so we need like a link or anything information that they can relate and give us a guide orientation to these funds. Example, if someone say that, oh, as a SME, I want to establish my product in Malaysia, and I that any chance ADB can support me and give any funding or grants.
Okay, so unfortunately I can't speak on behalf of ADB, but our counterparts in Timor-Leste has been doing a wonderful job in terms of providing information. In regards to Malaysia specifically, we will be able to assist if it is very specific to Malaysia. We'll be happy to do so, either under the ministry of our level as well as an agency. But one big support that we can potentially give is if you're a exporter, please attend our international event called MIHAS, the Malaysian International Halal Showcase, which takes place in September next year. Do that because if you're an exhibitor, what the Malaysian government does is that, through Matret, what we do is that we find buyers for Timor-Leste companies, exhibitors, whether SMEs or large companies, doesn't matter. We will do the business matching for you. So you just have to sign up to become an exhibitor.
So where we can sign, can you give any like website or all the information that we can, like as a SME, we can go to over there and like registration and pay the fee just to go to represent our country in the Malaysian market?
Okay, so go to our website to begin with. It's www.matrate.gov.my. You can also type MIHAS, Malaysian International Halal Showcase. They have also a website, information is also there. As mentioned, that we also have an office that takes care of Timor-Leste. If you go to Matret and you type Matret Jakarta oversees the Timor-Leste market for the time being. So please reach out to them as well. They will also be able to give you the information. So the information is available. Please join MIHAS. That could be your first start in terms of accessing. As I mentioned, when you become an exhibitor, we will arrange free of charge a business matching session with the Malaysian buyers in Malaysia for you to access the Malaysian.
What ASEAN level mechanisms or incentives can help SMEs from Timor-Leste to export to Malaysia?
Okay, maybe you're asking for a link. Maybe the other link that you can also look at is that there's a link called ASEAN Tariff Finder, and I think that's an important link. Look into that link, ASEAN Tariff Finder, where it allows you, it gives you information about all the tariffs that can be used by the Timor-Leste exporters, so that they can identify what are the import tariffs in different markets, not only in ASEAN, but in all the other markets potentially where we have FTAs with, ASEAN FTAs with. So that could be of a lot of assistance as well.
Like ASEAN is similar like European Union, and so they have a similar programs and access funds. During the 1986, Portugal was joined to the European Union, and between 80s until 90s, Portugal received a lot grants and programs to help to develop their economy. So this exists similarly with the ASEAN, or by the Malaysian government can like help Timor-Leste to integrate in the ASEAN market.
So there's a slight difference Right? So in the case of EU was a custom union of sort, right? So the integration in EU was a lot more holistic. It was at all levels. Right? And in the case of ASEAN, I think it's slightly a different sort of mechanism. It brings together a lot of companies on broad consensus on certain areas, and that integration process is ongoing. A lot of these efforts are undertaken usually by the ASEAN Secretariat as looking at it. Individually, Malaysia has been doing a fair bit in terms of supporting and will continue to do so. As mentioned just now, what we do is we do a lot of training for policymakers under the MTCP, the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program, that's been ongoing for a fair bit of time. I think the last number I looked at was something like 1,100. I think I can be wrong here, but about 1,000 plus Timor-Leste policymakers have been trained under this. In fact, I personally, 1 month ago, the last 30 days, in fact, I trained or provided lecture and briefing and all that to 2 groups of policymakers from Timor-Leste in Malaysia who were part of this MTCP, where we shared a lot of information and we shared a lot of the ways that we, data, information, experience of Malaysia in order to support our friends and brothers.
What skills or workforce capacity are important for companies wishing to export successfully to Malaysia?
Okay, so this is actually critical, right? Now, the Timor-Leste situation most likely will be very similar to the Malaysian situation as well. And an exporter, a small exporter, right? The CEO of the company is also the marketing head. He's also the HR head. He's also the export manager. He's also the factory manager and everything. Like, he wears a lot of multiple hats. So as you grow, you bring new people in. You go to train them, and training is a very, very important component. On a minimum, you need to have somebody who understands international trade, right? You need somebody who understands international finance, payment mechanisms and so on, right? So you need that sort of basic training. This is above and beyond production related training, because I assume that the production is already taking place. It's now you are sort of moving from being export ready to becoming an exporter. So in order to make that transition from being export ready to exporter, that skill set is trying to understand the international market on a very functional level. You got to know how are you set up in terms of financing. Do you have the funding to be able to do that? Remember, as I mentioned, when it comes to international trade, as with most business, cash flow sort of matters. That operationally is very, very critical. Are you set up properly to do fulfillment? Your brand is at stake. You are exporting. Let's say the importer orders 20 containers, and we had this occasion with Malaysian companies as well. They'll be like, whoa, I didn't anticipate 20 containers. I thought, I can only do 4 containers. I thought you will ask 2 containers. But the guy loves your product. He says, I want 20 containers, for example. Right? And then I'm jammed, right? I can't. My production is unable to do so. So in the case of Matre in Malaysia and all that, usually we will try to look at companies and we say, are you export ready? So we have tools. We have something called export readiness tool, for example, or we assess. Our officers will sit down and look at it, and speak to that and all that, and we will assess: are you export ready? The moment we think you're export ready, only then we sort of bring them overseas, because if not, you go overseas and then you sort of get in trouble. So if you're taking that export pathway, the suggestion would be is you got to have a domestic. You got to be strong domestically. You have. If you're not strong domestically, you may want to reconsider your export path. So if you are strong domestically, okay, that's good. And the second bit is you got to do a bit of study first of all. Right? You don't spread yourself too much. You're going to go to all the markets. Let's say you have targeted Malaysia. Okay. Go and participate in a trade fair in Malaysia. Pick up the market information. Because when you go to a trade fair, many things happen, right? If you can't afford to become an exhibitor, just walk in. Just become a visitor. Right? Just walk in, look around. What you will realize is what are your competitors doing in terms of products, certifications, packaging. It gives you a sense, right, of where you are. Now, assuming if you look at all that and you say, wow, I think I'm good enough to compete, then it gives you that confidence to go to the market, right? But if you look at it and say, wow, I don't have so many of these things, right? Doesn't matter. It's a good eye opener, right? Because you have not lost money. Just a ticket and you walked into it and you looked at the products. You go back and you improve, right? You get yourself ready. So the next time, you know, you're going with your eyes open. If not, you know, you might spend a bit of money, open a booth, and then you realize, wow, no, I'm nowhere near these guys, right? I've got competition from ASEAN countries, from Asian countries, from Western world, and all that. So I think it's very critical to have that sort of skill sets from a marketing point of view. And ultimately, then your CEO. So your CEO, you know, a lot of people think, it's never easy being CEO, but when you sort of make the transition from a domestic player to an international, again, you know, even from a CEO perspective, he now has to think differently. Maybe the time zones are different, right? Maybe and the conversations will be different. So the CEO himself has to get trained as well, and this sometimes doesn't happen because people are busy training people functionally, technically, but then you forget, or sometimes you also need leadership skills, right? You also need to be able to manage the stress of doing international business and so on. So training has to be holistic, and basically you have to make sure that you are ready for the export journey.
So, what can the tools that we can get from Medtrade for SMEs like Timor-Leste? Like, we can get any training programs or coaching programs?
Okay, so we are actually collaborating with our counterpart, Trade Invest Timor-Leste, and a lot of discussions taking place. Even yesterday when we had the forum, I was with my counterpart, and we are moving towards having some sort of arrangement if it's possible, so that we are able to share information and capabilities between both our agencies. So if there is any sharing and all that takes place, it will be through that sort of channel.
What opportunities do you see products from Timor-Leste can get into the Malaysian market?
As mentioned, I think, you know, coffee definitely is something that you should consider very strongly. I love avocado, so I think avocado will be good.
I imagine that a lot of avocados come into Malaysian.
Yeah, but you know, it's in the past it used to come, I think, from US, and then it started coming from Latin America, right? So there's no harm, you know, we are getting from different sources. And then any sort of other sort of agri-produce. I saw a lot of coconut, for example. I don't know what's the size of the export capabilities, but Malaysia is a net importer of coconuts, for example. Right? So as I mentioned, Malaysia is a net importer of a lot of products. So what can happen, I think maybe as a start, is to do sort of a, you know, understanding of what we import and how can we sort of replace that. You know, Malaysia has, you know, no issues of replacing products of what we're importing, because for us, the more efficient the importation process is and what we get would help us on two levels. One is it will make our exports more competitive because this could be intermediate products. We could have factories, food factories that are maybe using, let's say, avocado or using coffee or using coconuts as, you know, into their products, do a confectionery or something, and then when we export, we're not competitive because we are buying from Timor-Leste. Maybe, you know, earlier we were buying from another country, it costs us $1 US, now we're buying 50 cents or something. So, you know, that helps us as to become a more competitive export country. The second part is our consumers ourselves. You know, we want to taste different things, and we want to taste things that are quality and with the right pricing structure. So, and being part of ASEAN, you literally have zero tariffs between Malaysia and Timor-Leste, and that is huge. There's a huge advantage, right? So you will definitely be priced a lot more competitive, and that will also give you an advantage in terms of competing in the market.
In terms of the products categories from Timor-Leste have the greatest potential for export in Malaysian?
Yeah, so as mentioned, right? So, you know, what 70-80% of the economy is basically known as oil and gas, right? So oil and gas, if you put that aside, but if you do have oil and gas services capabilities, it's something that we're always looking for. So that is definitely it's an opportunity. So oil and gas related services could be an opportunity. And then if it is non-oil and gas, then definitely you got to look at agri-produce. Within the agri-produce, you have the coffee and avocado and maybe coconut and so on. Yeah. The seafood is something else in Europe, maritime economy. So seafood is another. We are also the importer of seafood, so that would also be.
What expectations Malaysian companies have when we engage in the business matching with the emerging ASEAN markets like Timor-Leste?
So if you're trying to export, the expectation again, it's that we want to get the right partner. For us, the way Malaysia's export model works is that we believe in win-win, and this is a critical part of Malaysia's export model, right? So we are not the kind of exporting country that goes there and want to take everything out, right, or want to win everything. It doesn't work that way. So what we try to do is that we are always almost on a transitional mode, right? So the first level, what we're doing is we are exporting. But more critically, after that is like, look, I'm testing the market, now I want good partners with it, because I want to grow together with good partners. Now, let's not forget, Malaysia went through this journey as well, right? So in the 60s and 70s, we went through this journey. We initially started with import substitution, right? So what we did was we started replacing whatever we're importing, we started manufacturing that, and then we started going to investment-related growth. In many sense, Timor-Leste would probably, is going through that similar phase, right? So we understand one of the biggest elements in any growth model will be: are you creating jobs? Right? Are you creating jobs? Are you doing technology transfers? Are you benefiting the local communities? Right? So these are all key elements that the Malaysian export proposal would be. Right? So we would like to partner with the right partners and make sure that our contribution it's not limited to just providing quality products and services to the market, but the contribution sort of grows onto creating, on a minimum, for example, mid-level managers. Right? We train Timor-Leste managers. We create that entrepreneur class as well. And interestingly enough, what can potentially happen, and this happened in Malaysia as well, is let's say we work with a foreign company, right? And after a while, let's say he's a marketing manager, it's a Timor-Leste marketing manager. After a while, it's a good chance he might come out and create his own company. And that is how potentially you can create an entrepreneurial class in Timor-Leste, but collaborating, working first in maybe foreign countries. And that's what happened in Malaysia. You look at our semiconductor, for example, in the beginning we were working in a lot of semiconductor companies, foreign countries. And then many Malaysians then sort of exited, and then they started their own companies and so on. Right? So then today we are quite successful.
How do you see Timor-Leste integration into ASEAN influence, future trades partnerships?
So how the integration helps partnerships?
Yes.
In a huge way, right? So when you're any country, if it is not part of ASEAN, you have some level of limitations in terms of establishing companies, partnerships, trade between countries, and so on. The moment you are part of ASEAN today, the borders are almost seamless, right? Potentially, we are able to send goods and receive goods almost without tariffs, right? And that's a big thing. There was also a move towards harmonizing a lot of rules, a lot of legislations, a lot of standards, and things like that that's happening within ASEAN, which makes it quite easy for us to move product and services across, as well as initiate some changes, right, from a product perspective. For example, in ASEAN, there is a movement to do an ASEAN-wide QR code for payment. Right? Timor-Leste for now is not there yet, but we do have a Malaysian company as part of the delegation who's trying to look into the possibility of maybe supporting that initiative so that eventually Timor-Leste will also have a QR code way to make payments. And today, in the case of Malaysia, for example, we can go to Singapore, we can go to Indonesia, and we can pay through QR code with the app that we have from Malaysia. So you don't have to change money anymore, right? You can go overseas and make the payment. Yeah.
This kind of payment is very safely, or
it's extremely safe, right? So that's the protocol that's been built as part of the ASEAN QR codes.
So do you have a planning to introduce not just to Malaysia but in whole ASEAN?
Yeah. So this
Block.
is already happening in some of the ASEAN countries. As I said, also, if I'm a Malaysian consumer, if I'm traveling to Singapore, I can make the payment through my phone from my Malaysian bank because I have the QR code, and it's, I don't have to change Singapore dollars anymore. Similarly, if you go to Indonesia, I can still use the same rate, and the rates are all there, right? So in the case of Malaysia can do that, Singapore can do that. I think Thailand, per point, can do. Not too sure on that. So many countries have done it, some countries haven't done. But the point is that once you become part of ASEAN, those are the things that will happen. Because now there is greater urgency because some ASEAN countries have done it, other ASEAN countries doing it, and then it gets easier because integration is taking place, and when that happens, partnership is also easier to get better.
Will your company be open to explore pilot projects, trade partnerships, or distribution agreements with the Timorese business?
Yes, indeed. So the 19 companies that are here, for example, tomorrow there will be at least one memorandum of agreement will be signed within one Malaysian company that's providing TVET services support to one of the institutions in Timor-Leste, where the memorandum agreement will be signed. So partnership is a natural progression from any B2B conversation. So that is, in fact, that's the way to go, right? So we got to start establishing real relationship with Timor-Leste friends, and then from there on, grow our.
And is it like an opportunity in the future that our create a similar event in the Malaysia, as Timorese SMEs can go to over there and introduce our products to local people and to the business and say that, hello, this is my kind of product from my country, and I would like to show in showrooms. Is any opportunity in the future?
So the best would be, as I mentioned just now, is MIHAS. So MIHAS is the largest halal trade fair in the world. But when I say halal, everybody thinks only food. No, you've got 14 different clusters, right? So this is the largest. So you would have a huge amount of buyers. Market flies buyers into, right? Sometimes up to 200 over buyers are flown in. Not some of it are flown in, some of it they fly by themselves. And then on top of that, we may ensure the exhibitors also get access to the Malaysian buyers as well. So by participating in MIHAS, you get access to Malaysian buyers, you also get access to global buyers. So immediately, you're not only accessing the ASEAN market or Malaysian market, ASEAN market, but also the world market, especially the Middle Eastern market, as well as European market, right? So, and these are all, for example, we're doing coffees, all coffee, right? It's coffees. So participating in this sort of events, global events, would help to give the Timor exhibitors, exporters, a sort of global exposure at a very low cost in that context, because you get access to so many different buyers.
I would like to say thank you for inside the program. I hope the member trade role, our acceleration business between two countries can expand our knowledge in the regional markets. And this is the end of the program of IP Business Podcast. Like, share, and comment in our social medias. I'd like to say thanks so much for on behalf of the company, and thank you for this event.
Yes, thank you very much.
Invest People mak agência ida na iha variedade de serviço onde ajuda indivíduo no negócio sira a tu iha desenvolvimento no sai sucesso. Serviço principal tolo na mak Invest People iha maka nessa formação, recrutamento no consultoria. Invest People oferece variedade de programa para formação sira, onde hadia habilidade no competência sira husi indivíduo na organização sira. Formação sira ne inclui Leadership and Management Training, Work Ethic Training, Human Resources Training, Project Management Training, Logistic Training, no mos formação sira seluk na bemak instituição ida precisa. Invest People mos vertulong ba instituição sira o de halos serviço recrutamento e a área sira nível diferente baseia ba necessidade husi instituição idania. Invest People fornece serviço consultoria oi de todo o negócio na organização sira e aspecto barak o se sira na operação. Serviço consultoria sira ne inclui coaching, team building, organizational development, business strategy consulting, marketing and sales consulting. Numa serviço consultoria seluk na bema que negócio que a organização ida precisa. Ba informação claro com o serviço Invest People niang, kita haluha kontakto email address iptloffice@gmail.com, número telefone 77969031 no official Facebook page IP Timor.